everyone. This is Wilson Cole. I'm president of Adams, Evans, and Ross, Backdoor Hire in ELOC Global. And I am joined on this call, as always, with our in-house attorney, general counsel, and lovely daughter, Samantha. Samantha, how are you doing?
I am well. How about yourself?
Doing fine, doing fine. Hey, Sam, today I want to talk about specifically for staffing and recruiting firms that are over in the medical space. That could be NALTO members, that could be Napier members, in various associations there. And I'm not going to turn these videos into a commercial for our other products, because that's just not what they were designed for. They're designed to educate the our client and the industry on what they need to do. But I do want to point out, on a backdoor hire standpoint, with backdoor hire is the #1 industry to get backdoor hired, not the #1 position, but the #1 industry, hands down, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is medical. And with our backdoor hiring software, it locates a tremendous amount of doctors, nurses, other medical personnel in ways that recruiters or staffing firms just don't have ways to be able to find them. And, over on, if you place salespeople, if you place VPs, if you place management, if you place engineers, those industries use LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn's not the best way to track backdoor hires, but you'll at least find, if you were diligent, you'd probably find a third to half of your backdoor hires. Now, one thing that we found, and as you well know, with LinkedIn, is if somebody is intentionally trying to bypass one of our clients, that they tell the candidate, don't update your LinkedIn, and that totally negates LinkedIn, or they disconnect the connection so you don't get the notifications. But with medical, nurses and doctors don't use LinkedIn the same way other industries do. So you're kind of limited to, checking their website. Our system goes out, scans their website, looks at Meet the Team, runs 72 variations of an email address, and locates them that way as well, along with 185 total data points. And so the system works amazingly well with medical staffing in recruiting firms. The problem, though, and this is what I want to talk about specifically to these medical staffing firms, is their contracts can notoriously be very wordy and just bad. Things like arbitration clauses, which we do a whole segment, we don't have time on that, but they also have very short, not all, but some have like a 9-month possessory period, or even a 6-month possessory period. Or these medical facilities own 10 different locations, and they start farming these resumes out to another location, and our clients aren't properly documented and secured. So what I want to spend the next 5 minutes talking to you on is, okay, I know our system's going to find those backdoor hires. I know our average medical recruiter or staffing firm sees about $80,000, which is almost 3 times the average for recruiters and staffing firms if they use the backdoor hiring product. The issue is being able to make sure they're secured with a proper contract and just those safeguards. Samantha, when it comes to these medical staffing and recruiting firms, what are the top 5 things that you want to see in those contracts that are going to help?
Well, one, we always go back to, and you laugh at me when I say this, but signatures. Get it signed.
Okay.
Because, because also some of the other things that I like to see in there, we had one that is not being able to get litigated because there weren't signatures, and without signatures, some of the other clauses make it where you can't sue on it if you don't get it signed.
Okay.
And because I like to see a 12 months from last presentation, not 12 months from first presentation, or 12 months from referral, or, last presentation or discussion is usually my go-to there. And how I feel on that. So, but if you don't, that clause, while it's great, without a signature does have some ramifications that we've discussed in other episodes. I love to see affiliates, or if you refer this candidate outside
To a third party.
to a third party, or things along those lines. Then let's see, I'm trying to get, my 5. Also, something that I don't see enough, and especially if you are placing somebody in a very niche, they have a specialty that isn't very common, so everybody knows everybody, is a name clearing provision. Where, if you already know John Smith, you've got to have, have they interviewed in the last 6 weeks? Have they, because
define what that means, not just knowing them. Okay, so that's a really good point on the name clearing, because we can do a whole session, and that's something that I do recommend that we do on name clearing, because name clearing, and it's not as bad as it used to be, but when they first started bringing out, or when we first started seeing name clearing defenses, that was probably 18 to 20 years ago, and it was a neat way for them to say, oh, we already know John Smith. And they were, in essence, just stealing the candidates that way. So we put together some safeguards there that now that technology is different, it wouldn't be relevant. But, okay, how do you define, I've seen in the contracts where it says actively being considered. Actively being considered is way too broad. How do you define it? Resume in the last 90 days, resume in the last 30 days, set up job interview. What's that?
I think it really depends on your relationship with the, with your client. Is it going to be do you think that they've got a series of resumes they're going through? I like have interviewed or discussed the position within the last 30 days.
Okay.
I feel like resume gets it too vague.
So have you interviewed him within the last 30 days? So that clause, in just coming from, I understand the gist, and I know you can't give specific legal advice on specific contracts, but do you put in that contract in general, if it's considered not our candidate, if they have interviewed?
Well, no, because you want them to have to clear it with you.
Okay.
Because I've seen where all of a sudden the recruiter takes over, recruiter gets them across that finish line, and they're like, yeah, but we had an interview with them day 25.
So they have to clear the name
within 72, hours, 5 days, whatever. I wouldn't go longer than a work week, but you've got to clear this with us that you have provide that you're already actively interviewing this candidate.
Because the argument on that I've utilized is they said, well, we already knew the candidate. Well, why didn't you notify the client? Well, we didn't have to. The problem with that, my argument has been, when you didn't notify the client that they weren't going to be paid on it, they could have taken this wonderful candidate and placed him somewhere else. Instead, you kind of froze the candidate to where they wouldn't send somebody else out. So 48 to 72 hour, name clearing provision if they have been interviewed within the last 30 days. So yeah. So we've got signed contract, we've got a 12-month possessory period from last discussion or presentation. We've got a name clearing provision of 48 to 72 hours if they have interviewed within the last 30 days. What's one more safeguard?
Well, and we also have the affiliates.
Oh, the affiliates, that's very good. Okay, so the affiliates or referral to third party.
And then this is going to sound slightly random, but know who you're dealing with. Make sure you have the correct party names.
And with medical, and this is why we're doing these specific series on medical, and the reason we're doing it is because we've got real life experiences in here right now to where we have attorneys that are litigating that we're finding out 6 months later that our client gave us the wrong name, that it was actually a different corporate name or parent company name or things on those lines. And that's, you know, knowing, and we just did one about a week or two ago talking about parents and parent companies and subsidiaries. That parent company doesn't owe you squat unless that parent company signed it. That's why you want the affiliates, but you have to know the company that you're dealing with. If it's, you know, ABC Medical Center in Akron, Ohio, and that's their trade name, chances are it's not ABC Medical Center in Akron, Ohio. It may be Medical Professional Associates of Ohio doing business as. And so you need to know, it sounds like semantics, but you need to know the exact wording. And that's where the Secretary of State comes into play. When you're working with them, ask them in that contract what their legal name is in that contract, and then go out and verify if, you know, Secretary of State. You know, easiest way to find Secretary of State in your state, and using Ohio as an example, is put SOS Ohio. It's going to pull up Secretary of State.
I am going to have a slight tweak on that.
Please.
Not every state has it run through the Secretary of State.
Okay.
So I would put in whatever state business search.
Okay.
And find whatever, you know, .gov.
Okay.
Because some have, like, trying to think, it's it could be Oklahoma. One of the Midwestern states has it where it's its own, like, business department.
Okay.
You know, the Department of Business and Revenue or something, and it's not always through the Secretary of State. I'd say probably 80% of states are with the Secretary of State, but there are some that aren't.
Okay. So in closing, you know, if you want to find backdoor hires and you're in the medical or medical staffing or medical recruiting, understand that I don't want to say we're the only option in town, but we're going to have ways to find medical and staffing that are going to be super beneficial to our clients because they don't have some of the traditional things. But regardless, if you're going to use this or not, we're only going to be as good as your deal. And so you need to make sure that you've got the front side of your agreement and credit risk under control. And just to recap, Sam, what you said was on the contracts, you want a signature, you know, and by the way, that's one of the top excuses when they come in, especially if their attorneys get involved, is they say, well, our client didn't sign anything. And so if you don't have a signed contract, understand that's going to be the first defense that they use. But you want to have the signature, you want to have the possessory period, you want to have the name clearing within 30, you know, if they've interviewed within 30 days, and they have to notify you in writing within 48 to 72 hours. And basically you don't want to say 48 or 72 hours, pick one of those. Then also if they refer your name of your candidate over to an affiliate or a third party, and then know who you're dealing with, whether you're utilizing the Secretary of State or the other sources. I think for most of our clients that they put in SOS in the state and business search, they're going to be able to find it. And if not, then you can try the other option with Samantha, because most Secretary of States, not all, but most Secretary of States are going to have a database, and you enter in their name, it will let you know who the principals are. But more importantly, if you enter in that name and you're not pulling up the correct name as exactly as they've given it to you, you don't know who you're dealing with at that point. And it sounds like, you know, well, yeah, there's a period, or there's you know, it was medical service professionals versus medical professional services. If the name's not right, it's like trying to sue John Smith or Toledo Jones. Two totally different entities.
Well, I mean, we're dealing with one right now where the debtor's engaged in disputing it. We're needing to sue, and it's not like they're going to hand over the name. We can't figure out where they are on the Secretary of State.
Yeah, or what state they're incorporated in. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, because if a legal name of, you know, Akron Medical Professionals, that's in Ohio, but let's say they're incorporated in Delaware. That's stuff that we need to know as well. So know who you're dealing with and know where you're where you're, where they're located. Well, that pretty much covers this issue. So if you want to help us, or if you want us to help you find your backdoor hires, I can't stress enough, with medical and staffing and recruiting over in the medical side, our average medical client seeing $80,000 a year in located fees, and that's just found money. If you're going to use us or not, you need to make sure that you do get the top 5 issues with your contracts fixed. Sam, any departing subjects before you press stop the record? Typically, I'm in control. Samantha today has started the meeting, so she's starting and stopping the recording. So, Sam, before you turn me off with the recording.
I was thinking you snooze, you lose today. I was the one up and at 'em quicker.
You beat me to the meeting first.
Yep.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks. Bye.